doctrine of the incarnation is the teaching of the church that says God took on human flesh and dwelt among us. John's gospel says he pitched his tent. He moved into the neighborhood. God came to be with us. And as Athanasius, one of the early teachers of the church, said, God took on flesh and became like us so that we could become like God. And I want to introduce you to one of my friends, Ann Atwater, who's really become a mother in the faith to me. Her story encapsulates for me what it means for Jesus to still be among us in the world today. Here's a woman who came from poverty here in North Carolina, but because of the hope of the gospel, knew that God was about transforming the circumstances around her, and that God was doing that by bringing her together with even people who were enemies, even a Klansman who she became friends with, and together they worked for good in our community. Her life is for me a picture of what it means for Jesus to be alive and active in the world today, for Jesus to have become like us so we could indeed become like him.
Well, see, there was a lot of people, poor income black folks, that was afraid to speak up for themselves. And after my learning how to talk, organize, I went out and started dragging them out, making them talk for themselves. And anytime they have having a problem, I'd always go with them to support them, but I'd make them talk first for themselves. And when they found out that, and this was back in '64, and they have not stopped calling me as of yet about help. Somebody's up called me this morning, wanted to know what services did my church give and what services do I give. And I told them I just lend whatever God give me to give out. God gave me, number one, the gift to reach out and touch. And when I feel that somebody called me for some help, God wants me to go on record as saying, I tried. All I had was God holding my back, and that's it. I had to wait, had to really put out there on faith. Then, sure enough.
Has he still got your back?
He still got my back. And he always will have it, as long as I keep trusting in him.
But you can't sell love.
No, I'm not going to sell out. They said I had, but I am not.
Somebody said you sold out?
Yeah, they said I sold out because I worked with a Klansman. And I worked with a Klansman, and he changed from a Klansman to a Christian. And they said I had sold out. Said he was a nigger lover. And we was chosen to be co-chairs to integrate the school system peacefully. CP was the head of the Klan, and so I was just an activist with a loud mouth.
What's CP? What's it?
It's his Claiborne Ellis. That's his name, Claiborne Paul Ellis, and we called him CP. And he was walking around, and he didn't want it. He didn't want that. And I particularly didn't want it at the time, but then I knew we were going to have Bill 1 school, and the children had to get the best education they could. And I know if we weren't going to look after our children, nobody else would. But we went to the schoolhouse, and we found out that the teachers there were out of their field. And so that's when me and him decided that we would work for the cause and not stop fussing and arguing because one was black and one was white. He was upset and I was upset. And he was cussing and calling all black folks niggers, and I was calling all white folks crackers. And I couldn't stand white folks anyway. And so it wasn't until way down in the meeting, about the last week of it, is when the children talked to us and got us together saying that they wanted to go to school with each other. And then we looked at each other like fools. We've been arguing about the wrong thing and hadn't been doing anything to make the school system be better. And that's when me and him started getting together. I saved his material. He hung it up on the wall one day at the meeting, and I kept the boys from tearing it up. And so he decided that I want as bad. He said, "You ain't as bad as I thought you was." And he started talking to me, and we started talking back. We went in the office and cried because we were doing things the wrong way. And just because one was black and one was white. lady with the issue of blood, she said if she could just touch but the hem of his garment, she believed she would be made whole, and she was made whole. And so many of us have different issues, and if we could just clean up our issues, then we'd be better off.
Sounds like hard work.
It is hard work when you want to do it, and it's hard work to live for Christ. It's not easy. It's just like construction work is hard. And if you're living, because see, the devil, that's when the devil starts at you. When he find out that you confess Christ, he's ready for you. But you got to stand up. You got to stand tall.
What helps you stand?
Or just knowing that I got God backing me up.
You said God gave you the gift to reach out and touch.
Yeah.
How'd you get that gift?
He gave it to me. I don't know how I got it, but he gave it to me. All I know, I could do that. That's the best thing I can do. I can be so sick, and somebody call me for rent, or call me for a house, and look like I get well. And and I can find it. All I do is pray and ask God, and he'll tell me where to send them, and I'll send them. So I was going until I got so I couldn't go out.
Why don't you just pray for them? That's what most people do. They say, well, I'll pray for you. And
well, I think he want me to go, I think he want me to go a little further. I think he want me to absolutely, I call it put hands on. And when I mean put hands on, it's like make that initial calling to make sure that that door will be open for that person.
That sounds messy, getting your hands on.
No, I'm so used to doing it.
How'd God get his hands on you?
Well, I reckon he keeps me in line. I don't know. I guess when I get too far out, he lay me up. I have to lay up and get straightened out again. Then here I go again. And that's the way I look at it. I'm hoping that my life would have exemplified the fact that I have lived for him, and he was satisfied, and hear him say, well done, thy good and faithful servant.
What Ann calls the gift to reach out and touch is a gift that God has given to God's people in the church. And the doctrine of the incarnation, that God has taken on flesh and has made us part of that flesh in his body is right at the core of John's gospel. Of course, that the Word took on flesh and dwelt among us is part of the prologue to John's gospel. And I love it how in that gospel John says that we have seen his glory, the glory of the one and only, full of grace and truth. And John, whose audience was a good Jewish audience, knew that to see the glory of God was an inconceivable thing. No one could see God and live. Moses had seen God's backside, but you couldn't look God in the face. You couldn't see God's glory and live. And yet he begins his whole story of Jesus' life by saying that we have seen the glory of God. You can't read the book without hearing that and turning the pages as fast as you can to see where have we seen this glory. And there's that great moment at the Lord's Supper after Jesus has washed the disciples' feet, after he has told them that there's one here who will betray him, and yet has served all of them, saying, this is my body and this is my blood, laying himself down for them. It says that Judas Iscariot betrayed Jesus. He went out from the meeting and it was dark. And the next thing John's gospel says is that his glory had been revealed. Jesus says that the glory of the Father has been revealed to you. What is the glory of God? The glory of God in John's gospel is Jesus, who taking on flesh lays his life down for all of us. And my phone's ringing. I better
Cut.
What Jesus shows us is that the glory of God is revealed in human flesh. when he's willing to lay himself down for Judas. That's what John's gospel proclaims as the sign that this is God. And when Jesus is raised from the dead, and we are invited to be part of Christ's body, that's an invitation to be part of God's movement in that particular way. So the doctrine of the incarnation is the belief that God became like us, but that in becoming like us, God showed us a different way of being human, a different goal for human existence, for what we're trying to become. We're trying to become the sort of person who can forgive even a friend who betrays us. And in so many ways, I think Anne's story reveals that in our present day. Here's a woman who in her work to organize her community and to get people housing and good education and the basic things that we need to thrive in the world, trying to do that for people in her community, she ran up against a poor white man who was spitting all kinds of hatred and trying to organize his community. And they had every reason in the world to hate each other, and yet God interrupted them. And God made it possible for them to see in the children who were in school at the time that their fate, their well-being was tied up together. That their kids couldn't have a good life here in this town if they didn't find a way to have a good life together. That kind of interruption, that kind of transformation, I think is at the heart of what the incarnation is about. And it's the Spirit of God that makes it possible not only for the good life to become real in our world, but for it to become real through that hard work of forgiveness, of looking an enemy in the face and saying, I'll trust you, I'll love you, because God has loved us in this place where we are. When we've been touched by that kind of love, when we've been touched by the love of a God who forgives us even while we're still enemies, I think that's what it means for us to have that gift that Anne talks about, the gift of reaching out and touching our bodies, touching other people's bodies, our faith inspiring us to change the material circumstances of the world around us, because God is present here, because God has made His dwelling place among the people, as the Revelation says, and that's what it means for God's kingdom to come on earth as it is in heaven. Because God took on flesh has been redeemed. Athanasius, who said that God became like us so we could become like God, he also said that when Jesus was baptized, he wasn't baptized because he needed the water to make him holy. Athanasius said, Jesus made the water holy. Everything is holy now. Everything is holy because it's been touched by Jesus. And if it's been touched, it's been touched by His love. It's been redeemed. It's been restored to what God made it to be. So this is creation restored. This is that deep healing that we need, and it's possible because of what God has done in Christ.
What is that up there?
The Rosa Parks Award she wanted you to see.
Like the Rosa Parks? Mm-hmm. She gave you an award?
Yeah, and they gave me, she presented it to me
1982.
in Texas.
For extraordinary acts of ordinary people.
Wow, that'll preach.
To Ann George Atwater. Without power and privilege, you organized for civil rights and human empowerment. In poverty, you worked with poor and deprived citizens. You studied and became an advocate for social justice and community concern. With compassion and humility, you boldly spoke and decisively acted to further the finest ideals of our national heritage. To further the good news of the gospel, too. Amen.